You got to take questions from everywhere, right?
Sure. Well, yeah.
So, should the government redistribute its citizens' wealth?
No, the role of the government is to protect our God-given rights, our freedoms. It's to make sure that people have the freedom to believe as they wish, and that's freedom of religion, with rights not being enhanced nor diminished. It is and people are allowed to have freedom of expression, men and women, without fear of retribution. They're to protect our property, which is the basis of the free enterprise system, with private ownership of property rather than the government or a monarchy or a church owning it. And the government is to set the rules. The rule of law is very important, where you have fair adjudication of disputes, where our rights are protected. And then who decides who wins or loses is we the people, the owners of the government. Consumers decide who has the best services or the best products, not the government picking winners or losers. And that's where entrepreneurism and freedom, the free enterprise system, allows everyone to have that equal opportunity to compete and succeed based upon their own hard work and ingenuity. And the government does have to provide, the national government is national defense. And at the state level, the priorities are law enforcement and education. So there are taxes, but you ought to use tax policy in a way to make your country more competitive for more investment and more jobs. And right now, our federal government imposes the worst, the highest taxes on incorporated businesses in the world. And so that ought to be made more competitive. So all these young guys around here who went to Hampton-Sydney College, where our son went, they got to have jobs. And if they got rid of that double taxation of profits that are it's over $2 trillion overseas, we could turbocharge the economy for young people.
So the individuals know how to invest the money better, and when they send it to Washington, it's malinvested.
Well,
so
yeah.
We should, right. And so I agree with you. You've made a very clear and eloquent statement of what limited government should be, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. But my question is Medicaid redistribution of wealth?
Medicaid, you could say as a society that we think certain things are important, and that low-income people, for example, ought to have this basic health care approach. And you can say that's something you think is important.
But is it redistribution of wealth?
No, it's not well, it's everyone saying
they tax the people that pay income tax 53%, and they give it to people that don't pay income tax.
The point
Medicaid,
is,
right?
the Medicaid can go to two different types of people. People who are permanently injured and disabled, who can't work. Now you can try to there's a lot of people who are injured and disabled who do work. Then there's others who are able-bodied and able-minded. And that should not be a permanent way of life. Just like any welfare program should be limited to a year, limited to 2 years, but not a permanent way of life. And so there's one thing, it's helping people for a short time, but not a way of life.
But shouldn't we let the citizens decide who deserves charity instead of having forced charity from the government?
Ideally,
that's the way the founding fathers set it up, right?
You're exactly right. Ideally, yes, people would take care of it, and you have voluntary.
Americans are generous, and they've always been charitable, and when the government gets involved, then just have corruption and malinvestment, and it's done badly, and you're not respecting the judgment of each person, because you know if your neighbor needs help or not. You know if he's a lazy bum, or you know if that he's injured for no fault of his own.
You make some really good points there, and ideally that's the way it ought to work. That's the principled approach.